Check this out. BC Raider here, bringing you another Commander deck tech. Today we're looking at Greasefang, Okiba Boss. This is a vehicle slash Orzhov control deck. So we're going to utilize Greasefang's ability of returning a vehicle from our graveyard every single combat. So we're going to be doing a lot of crazy dumb things. So let's get right into it. First up, here's our vehicles. Here's the iconic Smuggler's Copter. Whenever he attacks or blocks, we get to draw a card and discard a card. That way we can continually put these vehicles into our graveyard and continually do dumb, stupid things. Okay, now we have Reckoner Bankbuster. This guy is going to be a 4/4 creature, but also we're going to remove charge counters from him to draw cards, and eventually we will get a 1/1 pilot. Now we have Unlicensed Hearse. This vehicle is going to be very beneficial for us by dealing with our opponent's graveyard. Now we have Colossal Plow. This is just a very efficient vehicle that's going to give us 3 white mana and gain us 3 life. Now we have Cultivator's Caravan. This is a very large blocker and attacker, but it's kind of like a sitting mana rock. Okay, now we have the Weatherlight. The Weatherlight is a very efficient vehicle that's going to allow us to look at the top 5 cards and put any historic card from among them into our hand. Now we have the Nautiloid Ship. This one's going to exile our opponent's graveyard, and we're going to be able to cast a creature from among them. Now we have the very large vehicles. There's 6 of these in total. And first up is Parhelion 2. This one's insane. You can basically deal 13 total damage with this card. 5 of it is from Parhelion himself, but also it's going to bring 2 flying 4/4 white angels attacking with it, and they all have vigilance. Now we have Reaver Titan. This is a very scary card. It has protection from mana value 3 or less, so anything that costs 3 can't touch this guy. And whenever he attacks, each opponent is going to take 5 damage. Now we have a new one with Cybership. Cybership is a very large flying 8/8 creature that's going to exile the top 2 cards of your opponent's library. And you're going to get a 2/2 Cyberman. Now we have Night Paladin. This is a very low costing crew for a 6/6. But when it enters, it's going to deal 4 damage to each opponent. We could just sit back every single combat and just keep bringing Night Paladin on the battlefield over and over and over. Now we have Thunderhawk Gunship. That's going to give us 2/2 white Astari's Warrior tokens with Vigilance. When Thunderhawk Gunship attacks, all our creatures are going to gain flying. Now we have a boat. It could have been a mystery box, but it could have been a boat. In this case, it's a boat. We have Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship. This is a very iconic vehicle. It's a 6/5 flyer. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, we're going to deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Okay, let's get into the artifacts. Of course, we're playing Sol Ring. We're playing our Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, Talisman of Hierarchy. Of course, we're playing the One Ring. The One Ring is such a powerful card. Now we have the Celestus. The Celestus is actually very powerful in this deck because it's going to allow us to gain life, draw, and discard, but also provide whatever color mana we need. And we can just pay 3 mana and switch it from night to day, and vice versa. Now we have Elixir of Immortality. I love this card. This can just sit out. It'll gain you 5 life, and it'll protect your graveyard. Now we have the Underworld Cookbook. This is going to give us the option of discarding and creating food tokens. That way we can gain life. Now we have Key to the City. This one's going to be very powerful because it's going to allow us to discard the card we really need to, but that vehicle, when it attacks, won't be able to be blocked. And because we activated it, whenever Key to the City becomes untapped, all we have to do is pay 2 and we get to draw a card. Okay, now we have a fun one with Trading Post. Trading Post is going to be very beneficial for us because we could either discard a vehicle to gain 4 life, or we can make a goat token if we really need to just by paying 1 life. But before we get to the end step where the vehicle would return back to our hand from Greasefang's trigger, we can sacrifice that crude vehicle to return any artifact we want back to our hand. Or we can sacrifice the vehicle itself just to draw a card. Okay, now we have Forsaken Monument. This is going to be very powerful for us because most of our vehicle creatures are colorless. They're going to get +2/+2. But whenever we tap a permanent that adds a colorless mana, it's going to add a additional colorless mana. And whenever we cast a colorless spell, such as an artifact or vehicle, we're going to gain 2 life. And that was the artifacts. Okay, I'm running 1 enchantment. And that enchantment is Hidden Stockpile. This is going to synergize very well with all these vehicles leaving the battlefield. So we're going to trigger Revolt almost every single turn. But we can use Hidden Stockpile to sacrifice the crude vehicle to scry 1. Now we have Ugin the Ineffable. This is gonna be a cost reduction for most of our vehicles and artifacts, but we can exile the top card face down. It'll become a 2/2 colorless spirit creature, and if that creature dies, it goes right back to our hand. But we're going to use this mainly just to deal with our opponent's permanents. Okay, let's get into the creatures. First up is Vile Entomber. This is a very good blocker, but the main reason this guy is here is to go get the initial very large vehicle and put it right in the graveyard. Now we have Braids, Arisen Nightmare. This is going to help control our opponents. Either our opponents are going to lose 2 life, or we're going to draw cards every single turn. Okay, now we have Rebecca, Architect of Ascension. She's going to give us protection from our opponents in case they want to start blowing up our artifacts. Now we have Shram, Senior Edificer. We're going to draw cards whenever we cast a aura, equipment, or vehicle. Because we have the big plow, we have the big ox. Just this creature alone is going to help us crew 99% of all of our vehicles. Now we have Armix. Armix is very powerful because whenever he attacks, we get to put the vehicle card we need in our graveyard, but also it's going to give a creature a opponent controls -X/-X. Okay, now we have Oswald Fiddlebender. For those of you who remember Birthing Pod in Modern, he's basically Birthing Pod for artifacts. Now we have Ao the Dawn Sky. This guy's really cool. If he goes to the graveyard, we can either look at the top 7 cards and put any number of non-land permanents with total mana value 4 or less right onto the battlefield. Or we can put 2+1 counters on each creature or vehicle. Now we have Hot Shot Mechanic. This is just a very good early game creature that will help us crew most of our vehicles. Okay, now we have Pack Rat. We're going to use Pack Rat to help us discard the vehicles needed for Greasefang, and we're just going to keep making a bunch of rats. Now we have Dockside Chef. We're going to use him to sacrifice the vehicle before the end step trigger. That way we can continually draw cards. Now we have Loran of the Third Path. She's pretty much here just to deal with our opponent's artifacts and enchantments and draw some cards. But also, you can use Loran to destroy your own vehicle if you really need to. Now we have Foundry Inspector. This guy is just going to help us reduce the cost of all of our artifacts. Now we have Lion Sash. Lion Sash is not a vehicle. It's an equipment. However, we're going to use this to exile a bunch of cards from our opponent's graveyards. That way we can deal with that and he's going to get bigger. Now we have Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel is going to give us a little hedge against our opponents for casting spells. Okay, that was the creatures. Alright, let's get into the instance. Of course, we have Enlightened Tutor, so we can go get whatever artifact we want. Okay, now we have Entomb. Entomb will go get the biggest vehicle possible and put it right into the graveyard. That way, we can use Greasefang to get it in play as fast as possible. Now we have Deadly Dispute. That way, before the end step trigger of Greasefang goes off, we can sacrifice that artifact, draw 2 cards, and make a treasure. Similar to that, we have Bitter Triumph. We're going to do the same thing, except we're going to destroy a opponent's creature or planeswalker. Now, with even more spot removal, we have Anguish Unmaking, Mortify. This will destroy a enchantment or creature. Now we have Fracture. This will deal with a artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. Now we have Path to Exile, Swords the Plowshare, and Dispatch. Dispatch is going to be slightly better than Swords and Path because we're going to have enough artifacts. We're just going to exile whatever creature we want with no drawback. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. Now we have a couple more spot removal spells. We have Vindicate, which will destroy whatever permanent we want. Now we have Rite of Oblivion. Even with the additional cost of sacrificing a non-land permanent, we're just going to sacrifice the vehicle before the end step trigger. Now we have a bunch of mass removal. We're playing black, so we're playing Toxic Deluge. We have Austere Command. We have Cleansing Nova. We have Day of Judgment. We have Kaya's Wrath. We have Dam. Dam's actually pretty good because this will give you the option of it being just a spot removal for a creature, or you can overload it and it'll become a Wrath of God. We have Merciless Eviction. If we need to exile artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers, you do kind of have to be careful with these spells because you don't want to exile your artifacts. Similar to that, we have Farewell. Farewell is probably the best mass removal spell in Commander right now. Now we have Morbid Curiosity. In the event we have, let's say, Reaver Titan, which is a very high-powered creature, we're going to use Morbid Curiosity to sacrifice that very large creature to draw that many cards. Now we have Final Parting. Final Parting is actually very cool because you're going to search your library for 2 cards. You're going to search for a card you want in your hand and probably a vehicle you want in your graveyard. Now we have Invoke Justice. This is going to be very, very good for returning whatever permanent we want and making that vehicle even bigger. We also have Brilliant Restoration. This is a one-sided. We're going to bring back all of our artifacts and enchantments. Okay, let's get into the land base. This is a very simple land base. We have Command Tower. We have Marsh Flats. We have Godless Shrine. We have Shadowy Backstreet. We have Sunlit Marsh. Now we have our Battlebond land with Vault of Champions. We have Shattered Sanctum. Concealed Courtyard. Fetid Heath. Silent Clearing. Caves of Coilus. And Restless Fortress. I really like Restless Fortress because whenever this attacks, our opponents are going to lose 2 life and we're going to gain 2 life. Now we have Fabled Passage. Now we have Ancient Den. Castle Ardenvale. If we get to the point where we can start creating 1/1 human tokens, that's going to be pretty good for us. Now we have Bright Climb Pathway. This is your option of either white mana or black mana. Now we have Vault of Whispers. Takanuma. Takanuma is going to be very good for us because we're going to mill 3 cards and then we get to return a creature back to our hand. Now to deal with our opponent's graveyard, we have Bajuka Bog. Now we have a couple of colorless lands. Spire of Industry. This will allow us to pay life and add whatever color we want. Now we have Buried Ruin. Buried Ruin is going to help us in case our opponents try to exile one of our vehicles. We can just put it back into our hand. Now we have Rogue's Passage. We're going to use Rogue's Passage on our very large vehicles. That way they can't be blocked. Okay, now we have Gyre Reach Sanitarium. This is going to be very beneficial for us for the simple fact of it's going to allow us to draw and then discard. That way we can continually put these vehicles into our graveyard. Now we have Phyrexia's Core. We're going to use this to sacrifice the vehicles to gain life. And when that's not enough, we have Vault of the Archangel. This is going to give all of our creatures lifelink and death touch. We have 5 plains and 4 swamps. And that was the deck tech for Greasefang Okiba Boss. This deck is really fun, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. There'll be a link to the deck list for Moxfield in the comments below. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, share these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.